Hello, I'm Mortiza, and in this video, I'm going to introduce 100 essential terms that you should be familiar with before diving into programming. In this video, we will get acquainted with the most common programming terminology. Whether you've just started programming or plan to do so in the future, make sure to watch this video. Programming terms might have different meanings in the real world, but they take on different forms within the realm of software. In this video, we'll explore these terms through examples to provide a better understanding. I would be delighted if you liked this video and subscribe to my channel. Variable. A variable is a named storage location that holds a value. It can change during the program's execution. Example. In web development, a variable like username can store the user's input and personalize their experience. Function. A function is a block of code that performs a specific task. It's reusable and helps in organizing code. Example. You can create a function in application development to handle user authentication and ensure data security. Loop. A loop repeats a set of instructions until a certain condition is met, aiding in automating tasks or iterating through data. Example. In web development, a loop can display a list of products on an e-commerce site, making it efficient to manage inventory. Array. An array is a data structure that holds multiple values of the same type. It's useful for organizing and manipulating data. Example. You might use an array in application development to store user preferences for themes or notification settings. Database. A database is a structured collection of data. In web development, databases store user information and content data. Example. A well-designed database is essential for application development, ensuring efficient data storage and retrieval. HTML. HTML, Hypertext Markup Language, is the standard language for creating web pages. It structures content like headings and paragraphs. Example. In web development, HTML is used to create the basic structure of a web page, from headings to clickable links. CSS. CSS, Cascading Style Sheets, styles HTML elements by controlling their layout, appearance, and design. Example. CSS is crucial in web development as it's responsible for making websites visually appealing through color, layout, and fonts. JavaScript. JavaScript is a versatile scripting language that adds interactivity and behavior to web pages. Example. In web development, JavaScript enables dynamic features like form validation or real-time content updates. Algorithm. An algorithm is a set of steps or instructions to solve a specific problem or perform a task. Example. Machine learning algorithms are used in application development to predict user behavior based on historical data. Debugging. Debugging is the process of identifying and fixing errors or bugs in code to ensure proper functionality. Example. Debugging is a critical skill in programming. It involves tracing and correcting issues that affect an application's performance. API. An API, Application Programming Interface, defines interactions between different software applications, allowing them to communicate. Example. Social media platforms often offer APIs, enabling developers to integrate features like sharing or login functionality into apps. Framework. A framework is a pre-established set of tools, guidelines, and libraries that accelerate software development. Example. Using a framework like React in web development streamlines the creation of user interfaces and enhances overall efficiency. Interface. An interface defines how different components of a system communicate with each other. Example. APIs serve as interfaces in web development, specifying how different software components interact and exchange data. Object. An object is a self-contained unit that contains both data and functions that operate on that data. Example. In object-oriented programming, you can create an object like user with properties like name, email, and methods like login. Compiler. A compiler translates high-level programming code into machine code, making it executable by a computer. Example. When you write code, the compiler transforms it into a format that the computer's processor can understand and execute. Dependency. Dependencies are external components or libraries that a software project relies on to function properly. Example. Modern application development often involves managing dependencies to incorporate third-party tools and features. Version control. Version control systems like it track changes in code, making collaboration among developers more manageable. Example. In software development, version control allows multiple developers to work on the same code base concurrently while avoiding conflicts. Encryption. Encryption involves converting data into a secure format to prevent unauthorized access during transmission or storage. Example. Data encryption is a critical aspect of application development, ensuring sensitive information remains secure. Server. A server is a computer or system that stores and manages data, responding to client requests in networked environments. Example. In web development, servers host websites and applications, delivering content to users when they access a URL. Client. A client is a device, usually a computer or a smartphone, that interacts with servers to request and display data. Example. When you open a browser and access a website, your device acts as a client, retrieving and displaying content from the server. Cache. Caching involves storing copies of data in a temporary location, reducing load times and improving performance. Example. Caching is commonly used in web development to store frequently accessed data, such as images or CSS files, for faster retrieval. Responsive. Responsive design ensures that websites or applications adapt and display correctly across different devices and screen sizes. Example. With responsive design, your website will look equally stunning whether accessed on a smartphone, tablet, or desktop. Security. Security practices protect applications and data from unauthorized access, breaches, and other malicious activities. Example. Robust security measures are a must in web development to safeguard user information and maintain data integrity. Scalability. Scalability refers to an application's ability to handle increased workload or user demands without sacrificing performance. Example. Ensuring scalability is crucial in web development to accommodate growing user bases and maintain optimal user experiences. Bug. A bug is an error or flaw in a program's code that causes it to behave unexpectedly or produce incorrect results. Example. The programmer spent hours debugging the code to eliminate a critical bug that was causing crashes. Byte. A byte is the basic unit of digital information storage, representing 8 bits of data. Example. The image file was 1.5 megabytes in size, consisting of thousands of individual bytes. Class. A class is a blueprint that defines the structure and behavior of objects in object-oriented programming. Example. The developer created a student class to model student information and behaviors. Comment. A comment is a text annotation added to code to provide explanations or documentation for other programmers. Example. The code was well documented with comments that explain the purpose of each function. Data structure. A data structure is a way to organize and store data in memory, such as arrays, linked lists, and trees. Example: the developer chose a hash table data structure to efficiently store and retrieve user data. Concatenation. Concatenation is the process of combining strings or data elements into a single, longer string or data structure. Example: the program used string concatenation to display the user's name and greeting together. Instance. An instance is a specific occurrence of an object based on a class, with its own set of data and behaviors. Example: each person instance stored unique information such as name, age, and address. Inheritance. Inheritance is a concept in object-oriented programming where a new class can inherit properties and behaviors from an existing class. Example: the car class inherited attributes like engine and wheels from the vehicle class. Interpreter. An interpreter is a program that reads and executes code line by line, converting it to machine instructions on the fly. Example: Python uses an interpreter to execute scripts, making it suitable for rapid development. Iterator. An iterator is an object that provides a way to access elements of a collection sequentially, without exposing its internal structure. Example: the for loop used an iterator to traverse the elements of the array. Library. A library is a collection of pre-written code that provides specific functionalities, which developers can reuse in their programs. Example: the graphics library offered ready-to-use functions for drawing shapes and images on the screen. Method. A method is a function associated with an object or class, allowing objects to perform actions or provide information. Example: the calculate price method computed the total cost of items in the shopping cart. Operator. An operator is a symbol that represents an operation to be performed on one or more operands. Example: the addition operator plus combine two numbers to calculate the sum. Overloading. Overloading occurs when a class defines multiple methods with the same name but different parameter lists. Example: method overloading allows the calculator class to perform addition with different data types. Overriding. Overriding happens when a subclass provides a specific implementation for a method already defined in its superclass. Example: the child class overrode the display method inherited from the parent class to customize its behavior. Paradigm. A paradigm is a fundamental model or approach that guides the design and structure of programming languages and practices. Example: functional programming and object-oriented programming are two different programming paradigms. Parameter. A parameter is a value passed to a function or method when it is called, enabling the function to work with specific data. Example: the calculate tax function accepted the purchase amount as a parameter to compute the applicable tax. Polymorphism. Polymorphism is a concept in object-oriented programming that allows objects of different classes to be treated as instances of a common superclass. Example: polymorphism enabled the shape superclass to represent various shapes like circles and squares. Recursion. Recursion is a programming technique where a function calls itself to solve a problem by breaking it down into smaller instances. Example: the factorial of a number was calculated using a recursive function that called itself with decreasing values. Return. The return statement in a function specifies the value that the function should produce and provide to the caller. Example: the calculate average function returned the computed average value of a set of numbers. Scope. Scope defines the region in code where a variable or function is accessible and can be used. Example: the variable declared inside a function had a local scope and could only be accessed within that function. Script. A script is a sequence of instructions or code that is executed to perform a specific task. Example: the JavaScript script added interactivity to the website by responding to user actions. Serialization. Serialization is the process of converting complex data structures into a format that can be easily stored or transmitted. Example: the application used JSON serialization to save user preferences in a compact, readable format. String. A string is a sequence of characters, typically used to represent text in programming. Example: the user's input was stored as a string and displayed as a welcome message. Syntax. Syntax refers to the set of rules that govern the structure and composition of programming languages. Example: the error occurred due to incorrect syntax in this statement. Testing. Testing involves verifying that a program's code functions correctly and meets its intended requirements. Example: comprehensive testing ensured that the application was free from critical defects. Type. A type defines the category of data a variable can hold, such as integers, floating point numbers, strings, and more. Example: the variable was declared with the int type to store integer values. Abstraction. Abstraction is the process of simplifying complex reality by modeling classes, objects, or systems in software. Example: the car class abstracted the common properties and behaviors of different car models. Access modifier. An access modifier defines the level of visibility and accessibility of class members, variables, and methods from outside the class. Example: the private access modifier restricted direct access to the member from outside the class. Annotation. An annotation is metadata added to code, often used for documentation or to provide additional information to tools. Example: that override annotation indicated that the method was intended to override a superclass method. Anonymous function. An anonymous function is a function without a name, often used in situations where a short piece of code needs to be passed as an argument. Example: the callback function was defined as an anonymous function within the for each loop. Argument. An argument is a value passed to a function or method when it is called, providing data for the function to work with. Example: the function calculate tax required the purchase amount as an argument to compute the applicable tax. Arithmetic. Arithmetic involves performing mathematical operations like addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division on numerical values. Example: the program used arithmetic operations to calculate the total cost of items in the shopping cart. Assertion. An assertion is a statement that checks if a condition is true during the program's execution and halts if the condition is false. Example: assertions were added to validate that the input data met the required criteria. Asynchronous. Asynchronous operations allow a program to continue executing other tasks while waiting for a time-consuming operation to complete. Example: the asynchronous request retrieved data from the server without blocking the user interface. Authentication. Authentication is the process of verifying the identity of a user, often using a username and password combination. Example: the login page included an authentication mechanism to ensure only authorized users could access the application. Binary. Binary is a base 2-numeral system that uses only 2 digits, 0 and 1, representing data and instructions in computers. Example: the binary representation of the number 10 is 1010. Bit. A bit is the smallest unit of data in computing, representing a binary value of either 0 or 1. Example: computers process and transmit data in the form of bits, which are the building blocks of digital information. Breakpoint. A breakpoint is a marker set in the code that suspends program execution at a specific line, allowing developers to inspect variables and step through code. Example: the developer placed a breakpoint in the for loop to examine the values of variables at that point. Call stack. The call stack is a data structure that keeps track of function calls and their order during program execution. Example: as functions are called, they are added to the call stack, and when they return, they are removed. Casting. Casting is the process of converting a value from one data type to another, often to enable operations that require compatible types. Example: the integer value was cast to a floating point number before performing a division operation. Character set. A character set is a collection of characters, symbols, and glyphs that a programming language uses to represent text. Example: the ASCII character set includes standard characters like letters, numbers, and punctuation. Client-server. The client-server architecture involves the division of tasks between client devices that request services and servers that provide them. Example: in a client-server application, the client sends requests to the server to retrieve data or perform actions. Cloning. Cloning creates a duplicate of an object, often used to preserve the state of an object or to create independent copies. Example: the clone method created a copy of the original object with identical attributes. Comparison. Comparison involves evaluating whether two values are equal, less than, greater than, or related in some other way. Example: the if statement included a comparison to check if the user's input was greater than a specified threshold. Constructor. A constructor is a special method that initializes an object when it is created, often used to set initial values for attributes. Example: the book class's constructor set the initial values for title and author when a new book object was created. Control flow. Control flow refers to the order in which statements and instructions are executed in a program, influenced by conditions and loops. Example: the control flow of the program depended on the user's input and the decisions made by conditional statements. Convention. A convention is a standardized practice or guideline followed by programmers to maintain consistency and readability in code. Example: indentation and naming conventions were important aspects of maintaining a clean and readable code base. Data encapsulation. Data encapsulation is the practice of bundling data and methods that operate on the data within a single unit, like a class. Example: data encapsulation ensured that the internal details of an object were hidden from external code. Deadlock. A deadlock occurs when two or more threads or processes are blocked, each waiting for a resource held by another, leading to a standstill. Example: a deadlock arose when both threads were waiting for each other to release a shared resource. Declaration. A declaration introduces a variable, constant, or function to the compiler, providing information about its type and name. Example: the variable counter was declared to store the number of iterations in the loop. Deserialization. Deserialization is the process of reconstructing objects from a serialized format, often used to restore data after storage or transmission. Example: the application used deserialization to recreate user settings from a saved configuration file. Destructor. A destructor is a special method that is called when an object is destroyed or goes out of scope, often used to release resources. Example: the destructor of the file class closed the file handle and released system resources. Documentation. Documentation includes explanatory text, comments, and annotations added to code to aid in understanding, maintenance, and collaboration. Example: comprehensive documentation made it easier for new team members to understand the code base. Enumeration. An enumeration is a set of named constant values, often used to represent distinct choices or states. Example: the days of week enumeration included values like Monday, Tuesday, and so on. Event. An event is a signal that something has occurred, often used in programming to trigger specific actions or responses. Example: the onClick event was attached to the button, causing a function to run when the button was clicked. Exception. An exception is a runtime error or unexpected event that disrupts the normal flow of a program. Example: an exception was thrown when the application attempted to divide by 0. Functional programming. Functional programming is a programming paradigm that emphasizes using functions as the primary building blocks of software. Example: functional programming languages encourage writing pure functions that avoid side effects and mutable state. Garbage collection. Garbage collection is an automated process that identifies and reclaims memory occupied by objects that are no longer in use. Example: the programming language's built-in garbage collector ensured efficient memory management. Generic. Generics allow the creation of reusable code by defining classes, functions, or methods that can work with different data types. Example: generics were used to create a flexible list class that could store elements of any data type. Graphical user interface. GUI. A GUI is a visual interface that allows users to interact with software applications using graphical elements. Example: the GUI of the photo editing software included buttons, menus, and sliders for easy manipulation. Heap. The heap is a region of a program's memory used to store dynamically allocated objects and data structures. Example: objects created using the new keyword are stored in the heap memory. Hexadecimal. Hexadecimal is a base 16 numeral system used to represent values with digits 0 to 9 and letters AF, often used in computing to represent byte values. Example: the color code hashtag FF0000 represents the hexadecimal value for red. Integrated Development Environment. IDE. An IDE is a software application that provides comprehensive tools and features for coding, debugging, and testing. Example: the programmer used an IDE to write, test, and debug the application in a single environment. Logging. Logging involves recording events, messages, and errors during program execution for debugging and analysis purposes. Example: the application's logging system recorded important events and errors to help diagnose issues. Memory management. Memory management involves allocating and deallocating memory for data and objects in a program to ensure efficient use of resources. Example: the programming language's memory management system automatically reclaimed memory occupied by unused objects. Modularity. Modularity is the practice of breaking down a program into smaller, manageable components or modules for easier development and maintenance. Example: the application's modular architecture allowed different teams to work on separate components independently. Multithreading. Multithreading allows a program to execute multiple threads or tasks concurrently, improving performance and responsiveness. Example: multithreading was used to perform time-consuming calculations in the background while keeping the UI responsive. Mutable. Mutable objects can be modified or changed after they are created, while immutable objects cannot be altered. Example: lists are mutable, allowing elements to be added, removed, or changed, while tuples are immutable. Object reference. An object reference is a pointer or identifier that refers to a specific object stored in memory. Example: The variable person held an object reference to an instance of the person class. Procedural programming. Procedural programming is a programming paradigm that focuses on using procedures or functions to define the logic of a program. Example: in procedural programming, code is organized into functions that perform specific tasks. I/O, input-output. I/O refers to the process of reading data from a source, input, or sending data to a destination, output. Example: the program used I/O operations to read user input and display results on the screen. File. A file is a collection of data that is stored on a computer storage media and can be accessed by programs. Example: the application read data from a text file and processed its contents. Boolean logic. Boolean logic involves using logical operators, and, or, not, to evaluate and manipulate true/false values. Example: Boolean logic was used to control the program's flow based on certain conditions. Syntax error. A syntax error occurs when code violates the rules of the programming language's syntax. Example: the program failed to compile due to a syntax error in the if statement. Runtime error. A runtime error occurs when a program executes and encounters an issue that was not detected during compilation. Example: the division by zero caused a runtime error, leading to the program's termination. Deployment. Deployment involves releasing and installing a software application for use by end users. Example: after thorough testing, the development team proceeded with the deployment of the new version. Agile. Agile is a project management methodology that emphasizes flexibility, collaboration, and iterative development. Example: the development team adopted the Agile approach to respond to changing requirements more effectively. Git. Git is a distributed version control system that tracks changes to source code during development. Example: developers use Git to manage code changes, collaborate, and maintain version history. GitHub. GitHub is a web-based platform that hosts Git repositories, providing tools for version control, collaboration, and code sharing. Example: the team collaborated on the project using GitHub, which allowed them to track changes and review code. Issue tracking. Issue tracking involves monitoring and managing tasks, bugs, and feature requests throughout the software development process. Example: the project manager used an issue tracking system to assign, prioritize, and resolve tasks. Null. Null represents the absence of a value or the lack of an assigned object or reference. Example: the variable was initialized with null, indicating that it did not currently point to any object. Surely, the number of basic words to start programming is more than this count, but understanding the meaning of these words and familiarizing ourselves with how they work can assist us in beginning our learning journey. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. It's an honor to have you as a member of my channel and to hear your feedback on the videos of this channel.